We hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light. And I think you said that has a and then I said, supposedly.
Hello, folks. We have a wonderful treat for you today. I am sorry, I didn't know how to say that. It's a very complicated phrase. I am Geoff Edgers, the Washington Post national arts reporter, and today we are bringing you Sarah Cooper, who is someone who may have been at one point famous for one thing, which was those things with the Trump guy, but I believe is now going to be famous for another talent, her writing. And I have a book here. Unfortunately, it's not the hardcover. I was a little low on funds this week, but I'm getting the hardcover, and it's hard, and it also will have pictures in it. But Sarah, you've written. First of all, welcome. It's very nice to see you again.
And it's so great to see you again. The last time we saw each other was in Brooklyn in 2020, in like July or something, I think.
I remember I was terrified because of the pandemic, and I ate no food that day. But we
Oh,
did see each other. We saw each other in person at this like sort of work office facility where no one was there. We went down in an
yeah.
elevator, but you were very gracious. I did a profile of you, and it was really one of the few times during the pandemic that I feel like I told a story that was of great value to humanity. So I really mean that.
Oh, well, I just reread it and it is incredible. Like you said, the secondary interviews, I was looking at Kamala Harris, Cher, Maya Rudolph. I mean, my father, even, you talked to my dad.
Yeah,
I
he wasn't easy to get to, you know.
he was probably the hardest one to get to. So
Um,
that was incredible.
Yeah, so we're here now. It's amazing that it's 3 years later. You look the same. I look like an old man from maybe like, I don't know, like a kind of semi-popular rock band. But
You still have
we're
that
here to
British
talk about
charm.
this book, this fabulous book. And I told you on email. I said I love this book, and you wrote, well, it was written by a psychopath. So we'll mind that. We'll figure out what that means. But let's start with the title, Foolish. Um, because that's not what I think of when I think of you. Foolish, it has a subtitle, Tales of Assimilation, Determination, and Humiliation. But explain to me why you titled this Foolish.
Well, it's very deep and meaningful, as is everything that I do. So there's one meaning, which is that foolish is referencing the fool that I played in the White House and how sort of foolish it was of me to do that. It's kind of a weird thing to think that I could play a 70-odd-year-old billionaire in the White House. But I did it. And the other thing about it was that I realized my whole life I've kind of been trying to look very smart. And I don't want to do that anymore. I realized I want to be foolish. And that was something that came out of a conversation I had with Jerry Seinfeld, who's one of my heroes, my comedic heroes. And he said something about how a lot of this business is just the business of being embarrassed. There's so many. I mean, even just having this conversation with you right now, it's like we're talking to each other, but there's people watching. It's all very, it's very. It can be very awkward and weird. And so to just sort of embrace the foolishness of it all, because to me, foolishness And unpredictability and imperfection is the most interesting thing that you can do in life. And I realized that the most foolish things that I did, or seemingly foolish things, are the things that I learned the most from. So when you think about it, foolish is the smartest title of a book in the world ever.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is this is the best book in the world.
Yeah, I would say that it's the greatest book. It has the best words. It's already sold over 1 million copies, so it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This and John Dos Passos. Those are my two favorite books. So look, here's the thing about you saying I tried to be smart, and but the fact is you are smart. You actually are smart. You spend a lot of time doing this thing in your life and in your book. I call it scanning for rejection, where you take uh, anything that exists in the world and you find out why you are flawed and you try to explain that. And I think you are hard on yourself. Sometimes I want to get into this book and say, Sarah, too much. You need to embrace yourself more. But then you do embrace yourself, and it's okay. So tell me about that, because um, to the outside world, we see you as an incredibly intelligent, funny, attractive star who came up and just blew up. So that's not how you always see yourself.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I am hard on myself. And it's the perfectionist thing, being an immigrant, you come here and you just you want to do everything right because you feel like if you do one thing wrong, it's going to be over. You feel like you only get one chance at everything. So a lot of my perfectionism came from thinking there was one right answer to everything. Oh, I said that, but I said it wrong, or I shouldn't have said it that way, or I shouldn't have used those words. I mean, I do it to myself constantly. And it's taken me a long time to embrace the idea of, hey, I did what I did. I said what I said. I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and kind of putting that in my mind instead of what I had before. And so it's like a daily process of just embracing every step in the journey, and whatever step gets taken is the step that was supposed to be taken. I mean, even my marriage, just realizing how a month ago I was saying how I was so disappointed in myself and angry at myself for choosing the wrong person for me, and a few days ago I thought to myself, wow, he was actually the perfect person for me, because without him I wouldn't have learned so much about myself. I wouldn't be where I am right now. So I'm so grateful now that he's the person that I married and that I spent 8 years of my life with. So it's like my mom says when she has these, she kind of reads these home goods decor sayings around the house, but they're actually very true. They're very frustrating, but they're very true. And one of them is, life is a journey and every step you take is, the right step. And it's cheesy as hell, but it's actually very freeing to just embrace every moment as the right moment, as the exact moment that you were supposed to have.
So I uh, would ask you, this question is sort of two-sided because there are people who don't write their memoirs until they're like 97 years old, right? And really, it's true. Uh, Golda Meir, I think she wrote her memoir when she was 97. But you, on the other hand, have written this memoir at a point that I would say you're in the beginning or I don't know how you describe it, but you've got a lot of time left being a creative, active person. And so tell us about the decision to write this now.
Yeah, I mean, it is early for me to write one. As you know, I'm 23, so being so young, I shouldn't be writing a memoir this early, but I am. Um, I had a great editor, Jill Schwartzman at Dutton, and she just really believed in me. And she said, I think that you have a lot to say. And you know what? She was right. And she helped me put together these essays. And a lot of the things that I write were things that I wrote during the past 3 years, but some of them were things that I had been writing since I was little. I put my journal in there from when I was 13 years old. I put my journal in there the week after I left Google, and all the regrets that I was feeling at the time, like, oh, I made the biggest mistake of my life leaving this great tech company. So I think it is a little bit early, but at the same time, because also I am 45, which I know is shocking to everybody, but I feel like I'm about 35. And so I do feel like this is a debut memoir, and I do have at least 2 more memoirs in me. So, Jill, I hope you're watching and ready.
Yeah, Jill was right. Jill's a very good editor, so she's right. Can I read something?
Oh, please, I would
Yeah.
love that.
I have a whole bunch of things I'd read, but I was trying to find one. The thing is, your pacing is really good, so it's like it's a little hard to read something really, really quickly, but we don't want to burn all our time, on me reading. And there's this wonderful passage. Oh, now of course I can't find it because I think I was moving it around. But there's this wonderful passage where you go to Starbucks, right? This lady, God, this is killing her. Okay, one night. Here we go. Ready? I'm sorry. Let me get back into my Great Gatsby voice. This is deep in the book. One night I was walking home and I saw a young woman crying on a sidewalk bench. She was wringing her hands and tears were streaming down her face. I was going to just let her be because I don't know any woman who hasn't cried in public. My go-to spots are Starbucks, Targets, and the Starbucks inside the Target. I figured I'd keep on walking, but then I couldn't shake how sad she looked. I sat down next to her. Hi, I said, are you okay? Wow, do I look that bad? She said. No, you don't look that bad, just sad. And she wiped her face and said, I messed up at my job and I'm just sitting here thinking about every mistake I've ever made. And it was so weird hearing her say that because I used to think about every mistake I've ever made all the time. The woman stared at me. Oh, sorry, I said. I was just going to say I used to think about every mistake I've ever made all the time. Really? She said. Yeah, she turned to me. What mistakes have you made? I clammed up. I didn't even know where to begin. I mean, I did, but was I really going to say it out loud? I'm 45. I'm twice divorced. I got so many opportunities in the last 3 years, and I felt like I squandered them. So many auditions I blew, so many amazing people I met, but I didn't say the right things. I went through a period of total fear, wanting to hide, waking up with thoughts like, you suck. You're such a loser. Why'd you say that? Inside my mind, a movie called My Most Embarrassing played on repeat, and it was not yet a comedy. And speaking of comedies, the TV pilots were both passed on, and I felt like a failure. I've never worked harder on anything else in my life. I wondered if my only talent was lip syncing to Donald Trump. That's not even a real talent. Could I really be that cursed? Maybe that sand ceremony was a satanic ritual. And there's another paragraph, and then she says, Ma'am, are you okay? Sorry. I wish we had an audience because I love that paragraph. There are so many little things in here. Even your 13-year-old journals, your mother only giving you advice that she is reading off of home goods products in all sorts of locations. It really is delightful. So let's talk about. You've written other books, and I have those books. I actually loaned them to people because I was going to show them as props, but I've loaned them to people because they're so valuable. And you cracked the code of power. We can get into the Trump lip syncs, but this is really the hook, I think, to it. Um, you worked at Google and Yahoo. You were very successful. And what did you learn there? Try to explain that to people and tell us about those other books because we want them to buy those too.
Well, the first book was 100 Tricks to Appear Smart in Meetings. And I was in a meeting at Yahoo in 2007, and some product manager got up from the table and drew a Venn diagram on the whiteboard. And this Venn diagram made no sense and had nothing to do with what we were talking about. So I assumed people would be like, hey, Jasper, sit down. But instead, people were fascinated by this Venn diagram and they wanted to make this circle bigger and the circle smaller, change the labels. And he went back to his desk and went back to his, Candy Crush or whatever he was doing. And so I wrote down in my notebook how to look smart in a meeting, draw a Venn diagram. And then a week later, I was in a similar meeting and someone was giving a presentation and said, 25% of people clicked on this button. And someone else said, oh, so about 1 in 4, and made a little note of it. And everyone nodded and was so impressed with this person's quick math skills. And so I wrote, how to look smart in a meeting, translate percentages into fractions. And I put that notebook away for a really long time, 7 years, until I was working at Google and I was a manager. And I came across it when I was moving in with my then fiance. There's a picture of me at Google. And I had so many more tricks, so I added to it. And I learned so many things. I think the biggest thing that I learned was so much of the corporate world is about imitation and imitating the person who has more power than you in order to get to that level. And so a lot of the corporate world is this performance. And I write about that being like, every quarter we had a performance review where they would tell you how convincing your performance was. And every quarter my manager would say, Sarah, you seem so passionate and engaged in your job. And I'd say, thank you very much. That's what I was going for. And I just saw a TikTok the other day, literally a girl who is in Gen Z. Gen Z is all about bare minimum Mondays. I don't know if you've heard of this, but they're finally getting hip to what's going on in the corporate world. And she was laughing her ass off because she said, I was in a meeting and we're talking about all this stuff and everyone's pretending to care. And then after the meeting, someone got mad at her for not pretending enough. That's literally what you're being judged on, is how well you pretend. And so that, I don't know what's going to happen with Gen Z, because I feel like they're kind of seeing, the man behind the curtain at this point. And so I don't know. I didn't really see it in that way. I saw it as, oh, this is a job and Google is going to change the world, organize all of the world's information, don't be evil, all of that. I bought into it. And it works for a while, but if you don't truly believe in those mantras, it can be hard to kind of keep going. And so that was a really long way to say that, a lot of these jobs tell you to show up your whole self, bring your authentic self, but you just, you have to love drinking after work and going to see baseball games. It's a very specific culture that you have to fit into. At Google, they called it googliness. You have to have a googly personality, and no one even really knows what that means. But you, at some point, I was like, I don't feel the passion that I think everybody else feels, and everybody may be pretending to feel or not pretending to feel. And when you have that disconnect, it can be a sort of an identity crisis. And that's why I ended up leaving Google, was because I felt like I was living sort of a double life, where I was sort of, my body was in meetings, but my mind was elsewhere. And so that's why I had to leave. And I don't know if that answered your question, but that's a lot, probably.
I think that answered it. The interesting thing about Gen Z, I think, is that we people you and I are in our mid-30s. In our 30s,
Yeah.
where we are on to the power structure, but we keep it in our heads and we write secret books, or we make a movie like Office Space or whatever. The Gen Zers, in the midst of actually being at work, break up the meetings and
Right.
say, look, I don't have the bandwidth for this. I'm going home. So that's, to me, the big difference. The thing about your Trump lip sync. Now, first of all, the roots of this lip sync were you were a fabulous singer, but not using your voice, right? You were a lip syncer. You were an amazing
Yeah.
lip syncer and could not even get into the chorus at the school in this area, which happened to be run by a man who went to prison for molesting children, right?
That's what
Maybe that's
happened.
not funny. I don't. Wow, that's real.
I mean, it's real, but that chapter is one of my favorite chapters. His name was Mr. Joins, and I just wanted him to like me so much. I wanted him to put me in the chorus. I thought I had this amazing voice. I went to church every Sunday. I was a young girl. I was belting out these hymns, and I just thought I sounded so great. And then my mom leaned over to me and she said, "Just mouth the words.
Just
Don't
mouth.
actually sing. Just mouth." And that's when I started lip syncing. So I started lip syncing God, basically. And I thought I had this amazing voice, tried out for chorus 4 years in a row, never made it, was trying to figure out why Mr. Joins didn't like me. I really, really wanted him to like me, and he never put me on the chorus. And then always had a chip on my shoulder about singing. And when I was 32 years old, I took a singing class and made my parents come watch me do a recital at age 32 where I sang Bonnie Raitt, I Can't Make You Love Me. And I dedicated it to Mr. Joins because I just could not get him to like me. And then a few years after that, looked him up and realized he had been convicted of, yeah,
Yeah, and
pedophilia.
I'm glad to say you quoted, that's where you quoted the Washington Post article on it. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, just to steal your punchline, you said, part of me felt relieved that I was not one of his victims. But mostly I kept thinking, wow, Mr. Joins was a pedophile and he still didn't like me. Maybe I really can't sing. Sorry, I mean, like you always, you give it for the joke. I appreciate that. we have this special thing, Sarah, where this is the Washington Post Live. There are when people found out that you were going to be on here, there were millions of people sent me notes, telegrams, and we have a thing called viewer mail, and we have just normal people in normal walks of life. We have one of them to ask you here. Can we see that question, please? Yes, a fellow named Fred Armisen from Mississippi emailed me, and he said, "What is your favorite name for a street, meaning an existing name?"
What is my
Seems very
favorite name
familiar.
for a street?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I kind of grew up on a street called Minuteman, and I like it. I like Minuteman, and I remember trying to figure out my porn star name, which I believe is like your favorite candy, and then like the street that you grew up on. So mine was like Tootsie Roll Minuteman, and I just thought that that was funny. So I guess I'll say that.
All right. In that story that I wrote about you, one of the leads was a woman named Robin who kept writing you. And
Yeah.
I feel like this question is like when Robert Plant gets interviewed and they say, when are you going to form Led Zeppelin again? So, and I know what your answer is, but I want you to tell me because I think millions of people want to know this, which is people didn't just like your Trump lip sync, they attached an importance to it as if you were shaping American politics and you were saving people, and that you were exposing something about the power structure and the way the world worked in ways that no one else could. That's why the vice president of the United States spoke to me one day, about you. And also, it's funny. But I'm sure you get asked this all the time. This woman, Robin, asked it. They say, Sarah, we need you. We need you to go do more Trump lip syncs or blank lip syncs. We need how can you sit there quietly writing your memoir when you could be lip syncing Donald Trump to stop him, right? So
Mhm.
tell me about that. I don't think you're going to do that again.
Well, yeah, it changes all the time. I gotta be honest. I went on a little bit of a book tour, and I was at Politics and Prose in DC, and we opened it up for questions. And the very first question was, uh, "Can you do Trump?" I was asked to just do Trump right then and there, and I wasn't sure exactly what he meant. But every city that I've gone to, somebody's asked about them. And it hits me every single time how much these videos meant to people. I went to my nephew Tyler's football game, and I was buying a ticket, and actually they just let me in because I'm Sarah Cooper. But the guy behind the ticket counter said, "You're Sarah Cooper," and I said, "Yeah." And then we didn't really talk, but then I got a message afterward, and he said, "I just want to say how much your videos meant to me. Me and my dad used to laugh with my sister and my mom at those videos, and he's gone now, but I feel like I can still hear him laughing at your videos." And it gives me chills just saying that. So it all the time it hits me how much people love these videos. And it's hard for me to think about, does doing them again, make them mean less, or does it keep it going? I've said before that I'm not going to do them. I've written in the book that I'm not going to do them, but as you know, this book is filled with lies, so, and written by psychopaths, so it doesn't really matter what I wrote in the book. But I do sometimes think about it, like, if he it looks like a big threat, maybe I will. I don't know. I actually don't know at this point.
I think that like all great artists, and when I talk to people who I love who write and comedians and musicians, I feel like it's just up to them. What I don't feel like it's very hard sometimes to figure out what am I deciding based on being asked to do this so many times, and what am I deciding based on what I want to do. And
Exactly.
I want to tell you now, with all these people watching, you should do what you want to do, right? That's it.
Thank you.
But I
I
mean, here
appreciate.
you are. You've defined yourself. You've already defined yourself. You've had an excellent comedy special. You've now written a memoir at the age of 23, and we know the Trump stuff. I actually talked to a young person today who was like 19, and I said, "Hey, I'm talking to Sarah Cooper later," and they were like, "Who's she?" And I said, "She did that Trump thing," and they had no idea who you were. And then I said, "Do you know who Tom Hanks is?" They said, "No," and I said, "He's in that Toy Story thing." He said, "Oh yeah, yeah." So I don't know if that's comforting or painful, but the beauty of
Can
it
I
is you move on.
tell you, can I
Yeah,
tell you something? I
sure.
was in Chicago last weekend, just hanging out with actually Courtney Hall, who moderated my event at Chicago Humanities Festival, which was really cool. And a guy looked at me and said, "You know who you look like? You look like that girl who did those Trump videos." And I said, "Do I?" So I actually got interpreted as the person, as myself. And then someone else said, you're not her. So, I don't know what's going on with the kids these days. I really don't.
Hey, Sarah, we just have a couple more minutes, but I'm curious. You're very, very honest about your life. You also share a lot about. I met your ex-husband, your second ex-husband, Geoff. He had a
Thank you.
guitar in the room. He seemed like a nice guy. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't look in the linen closet and see all of his T-shirts. But I talked to your parents. There are things you say in here that are tough on you, and things that are also like very revealing. Did you go to these folks and say, "Look, Geoff, I'm going to write about this. I just want to let you know," or did you go to these folks and say, "I'm going to write about this. How do you feel about that?" And then think about all of that. Because, I mean, he comes off ultimately quite nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be very careful about that, and I'm very glad that I was, because my feelings towards Geoff have changed so much. Like, I think I was, you know, when I asked for the divorce, I was very like, I don't even know if I want this divorce. I don't know. Can we still be friends? And then I went through a period where I didn't want to talk to him at all. And then again, now I'm in a period where I'm very thankful for him and I love him dearly. And I'm, so grateful for that relationship. So I sent him the manuscript, and he didn't respond to it, but he seems okay with everything. And my parents thought everything that I wrote about them was very funny, and edited a few things here and there. My sister, of course, Charmaine, she really didn't want me to curse. So but I kept the curse words in there because I enjoy cursing, and I'm not going to stop doing that for her. I'm sorry, Charmaine. But I have sort of a sixth sense, I think, a little bit about um, talking about these things in a way where I'm being revealing, but I'm trying to put a lot of the onus on me and taking responsibility for things that happened to me, and not saying, "Oh, this person did this and this person did this." And so that's kind of the line that I tried to toe. And I'll be honest, there's so much more that I could have said, so much more. In fact, Geoff, I was going to put you in here, and your demands for my mom's Johnny cakes, and how crazy it was that a Washington Post reporter was demanding Johnny cakes. So I didn't put that in here.
Can you tell people what Johnny cakes are, please?
Johnny cakes are the only Jamaican dish that I will actually eat, because I am not a good Jamaican, as my mom says.
Yeah.
There's oxtail, there's curry goat, there's all kinds of amazing Jamaican dishes, but I will only eat Johnny cakes, which are basically just flour and water fried. So it's bread. It's just
I
bread.
did say at one point to your mother, I think the word was hatchet job. I said, if I don't get a Johnny cake, I'm going to turn this profile into a hatchet job. And she promised, and I thought, and I got duped because I didn't get the Johnny cakes, and I still wrote a story that was, frankly, very kind, you know?
So so kind, so kind.
I wish we could talk for hours, couldn't we? Right?
We could.
Um, but we can't because there's a format here and there's a
Mhm.
huge demand for programming at the Washington Post Live. Uh, we only have so much time, but I just want to tell you, I'm so glad that we caught up. I didn't realize it had been 3 years. I really enjoyed my experience writing that article, and I loved reading this book. And I'm just gonna look forward to following your career because it really does feel like it's just starting. You know.
Thank you. It feels like it's just starting for me too. And I can't thank you enough for your generosity, your amazing writing, and your amazing questions, and just for being an all around stand up kind of guy.
Well, thank you. I can retire now. All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you to Sarah Cooper. Go get this book. And that's it for Washington Post Live. We're so glad you were here today. And any questions, comments, concerns, you know how to send them. That was the real Fred Armisen.
Really?
It was. I wrote him this morning. I said, I'm having Sarah Cooper on. Do you have any questions for her? He is from Mississippi, you know.
Oh my gosh, I love Fred so much. He makes me smile just thinking about him. Thank you for
I know
reaching out to him.
he's always into it. You know what I mean? So, all right. Hey, thank you so much, and we'll see you like when you do memoir too.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Am I still talking, folks? If I am, I'll say thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And just look at our website, and you'll see all of the programming that exists. And there you go. But thanks so much for being here.